Hello there, I'm Khadroth. Today we're going to be talking to you guys about the Lancer node for Galemas, aka 2021 NA Christmas. So this is going to be the penultimate node, the final destination that we are going to be sitting on for multiple days. And it's going to be imperative for you guys to actually get everything you need handled for this. Everything that you guys have done up till this point is going to rely on you having the shop cleared, all of your CEs gotten, and now finally here comes the devoted Lotto node. So this is going to be the big one that you guys are going to want to go the hardest in at the end of the event. However, again, we get this for, I believe, something like 8 days of the event or 9 days of the event, so you guys should have plenty of time to farm. So remember, we do have the universal comps in that video coming, but we also want to make sure that you have devoted comps for this node because some people won't be able to pull those off. And let's jump right in and explain some of the good options for you. So let's start by going over the overall structure of the node. Now, don't worry about the comp that you guys see on screen just yet. Let's just look at, again, our first wave here. Now, remember, this is going to be our Lancer node. It's going to be our Lotto node. That's going to be really nice for us. But the problem with this is that's pretty high health and it's pretty robust compared to some of the other nodes that we've done. So the problem you guys are going to have with this being Lancers is Eresh is not going to be an easy solution for you here. But before you guys freak out and start trying to grail your Eresh or get, an insane amount of buffs on him, just understand there's a much more elegant solution here, and that is Chen Gong. Chen Gong is actually damage bonus in the event. He will easily handle the first wave even at his normal level, and he'll also rotate the party for you, so that can actually be a really good thing. And then there's the other solution, aka Yorokobe Shonen. It's basically going to involve carding here and using crits to whittle down the first wave. The good news about this is it's actually pretty effective for this. The bad news is, yeah, there's some RNG involved, and that's going to result in potential 4 turns or 5 turns from time to time. However, because of that, the strategy behind carding is going to basically be if you have the cards to work through it in one turn, you're safe to go ahead and use your buffs. If you don't, definitely want to delay those buffs until the next turn, until maybe you get better cards and you're closer to being able to kill that first wave. That way your buffs aren't falling off for waves 2 and 3 here. That way you actually have the capability to clear through the node still very quickly and efficiently. Because again, you guys are going to be wanting to take the maximum bonus you possibly can for this to get the most out of your Lotto boxes and to prepare yourself for the next coming months until the next Lotto. Remember, from this point on, it's going to be 9 months until Shisho Fest, so you guys are definitely going to want to do as much here as you possibly can to kind of keep you going throughout the year up until that point. But the other big consideration we're going to have here as we start looking at waves 2 and 3 is basically that everything in this node is sky traded. And unfortunately, just about every AoE Saber worth their weight is going to be earth traded, which is going to counter them. That's going to be a problem, that the sky trade is countering the earth trait there for the Sabers. So a lot of them are going to have points where they just come up kind of short against Brynhildr or the demon in wave 2, and that's going to be a major concern for a lot of people. But there are a couple of man-traded Sabers out there that you guys can use effectively, Salter being one of them. She's going to be one of your best choices in that regard, and now that she's gotten the new strengthening on NA prior to when she was supposed to get it, so she'll actually be a lot more usable for this Lotto, thankfully. That should result in some better comps for us, but overall I don't think this node is going to be too difficult. The problem is going to be everyone is going to want to maximize their efficiency in this node, so be very careful about that. So now for our first comp here, just to kind of, again, explain this. So what you guys can see on screen is a carding comp. It's a crit-based comp that we're going to use for wave 1. And this is going to kind of be the gold standard of comps as this Lancer node is concerned. This is going to be the whaley, very quick, very efficient comp, and that's kind of why we wanted to cover it. You guys can see one of the biggest hurdles going to be right here with the NP levels, and you can kind of invert them to be whatever you want. You could also try to card it out here and maybe get away with a little bit less on the NP levels, but I don't necessarily recommend it. Remember, we've got that earth trait on both Saber and Mordred, which is going to be countered by all the sky enemies in the node, and it's just making them hit a little bit under where they want to be. What's so elegant and awesome about this comp in particular is that it's a little bit of a mix and match. If you manage to have your own Beni Enma and you manage to have your own OG Saber, you can take a second OG Saber and you'll do a lot better. Because of the charisma in OG Saber's kit, it's actually going to help out the damage requirements. So you might be able to get away with a little bit less if you had a second Artoria versus having Mordred. But essentially how this one's going to work is, remember, our CEs for the Lotto, our MLB drop C is going to have 50% charge. So each one of these Sabers, both Mordred and Artoria, actually manage to have 30% charge in their kit. So if they each handle a wave, you only need to find them 20% charge. And who gives that? Well, Beni Enma, and that's what makes Beni Enma so nice. Beni Enma is also a Saber, which means anytime you would have to card, everyone is effectively carding. You're not taking a support caster or someone who's countered by the node. You're taking 3 Sabers for this. So she works very well as a support in this node. And it's going to be really awesome too, because of the crit damage she has, because of the attack buff that she provides as well. So it's going to help them out. And that's what makes carding this first wave so good for her. And we'll talk about that one a little bit in a minute. But let's start by covering the NP levels. So again, right here you guys can see we have it listed as Artoria and Mordred 2 and 4, but we actually decided to show the worst case scenario. Remember, this comp can be any one of 3 combinations. It can be Mordred and Mordred, it can be Mordred and Artoria, or it can be Artoria and Artoria. And while we did display Artoria and Mordred here, these are actually the NP levels for double Mordred. It is the worst possible combination because neither of them have any sort of charisma. So all you would be getting in that regard is the attack up from Beni, carrying over from that first wave. So if you're in the Mordred and Mordred scenario, you have a 2 and 4 requirement in order to be able to kill. And you guys can see it will leave a little bit of health on that second demon, but nothing you couldn't card away, especially with 3 Sabers. With Mordred and Artoria, the NP levels are required to be 2 and 3. And you can use them interchangeably. It does not matter which. The higher NP level should be the one handling the final wave. The lower NP level should be the one handling the second wave. It just depends. With Artoria and Artoria, it gets even easier, and your only requirement is that they both be NP2. So what this means is you guys can stagger this comp in a way in which you take whichever piece of the comp that you're missing. However, do understand, in order to pull this off, you are going to have the requirement of at least having a Mordred or Artoria yourself at least NP2. And then the problem is going to be, you're going to have to be able to find that. So again, just to reiterate, Mordred and Mordred is 2 and 4 on the NP levels. Mordred and Artoria is 2 and 3 on the NP levels. And Artoria and Artoria is 2 and 2 on the NP levels. So there's your requirements, should be relatively straightforward. Now let's talk about critting down that first wave. So this is sort of a little graphic that we came up with to kind of demonstrate the combinations that you guys should be able to do in order to make it work. And there's a list of rules you guys are going to have to follow. So when you get to turn 1, in order to be able to do this, this is the stuff we want you guys to look for. So for starters, we're assuming that every single card is going to be a crit in this. Otherwise, if you fail the crit, you will probably fail to kill. And there's going to be a little bit of an issue because there are going to be potentially, 48 stars or something like that in the comp. You might have a card or 2 that are missing the stars that they need to secure the crit. Be very careful with that. You want to pick your cards carefully here. And that might mean slowing you down, but it should mean that you'll get faster as you get more used to this. The second rule is that Beni's Buster in position 1 can kill the high health enemy. So the high health enemy is that 34k health enemy, and that's going to be our major obstacle in this node. We want to be able to make sure that we kill it, but it just depends on which cards we have available, and that's why we're going to do this. So a Beni Buster crit in position 1 can actually overcome that. Otherwise, we're predominantly looking for any combination of cards that begins with at least a Buster lead card. Remember, you can switch which enemy you're attacking to kind of manipulate which card hits which enemy. But be very careful with that. We do have that requirement of you have to lead with a Buster card. So if you don't have a Buster card in your deck, skip until the next turn. So the third rule here is that any Beni card, basically the arts or the quick card, can kill the high health enemy in position 2 or 3. So that means if you need to be able to stagger your cards, but you got it, there you go. Now you can hit it either in position 2 or position 3 of your card choice in order to be able to kill. Mordred or Artoria's Buster card can kill the high health enemy in position 2 or 3 as well, and that's going to be what sort of makes this possible, and you guys are just gonna have to experiment with that. I'm gonna say be careful if you're in that double Mordred comp. You don't have any of the charismas flying around, it might not work as well in that version, but again, just watch out for that. The next rule is going to be that you need to prioritize the high health enemy last, or you won't necessarily kill it. This is not a hard rule because we just talked about Beni being able to do it in 2 or 3 and the Buster card being able to do it in 2 or 3. But if you don't necessarily have a whole lot of Buster cards, or you don't have a lot of Beni cards, you need to make sure that it's the last in the chain that you're hitting, just to make sure you have the damage to overcome it. Better to play it safe than be sorry. The other rule here is that cards must be able to be staggered. And what we mean by that is that, you know, as you kill an enemy, as you crit it down, the next card, if it's from the same person, is going to keep hitting that enemy and do overkill rather than switching targets. So you need to at least stagger your cards in such a way that it will switch targets as you're killing them. So if you end up with 5 cards of one Saber, or maybe even 4 if you don't get a good draw there somehow, it's not necessarily going to be the ideal scenario, and you might want to kind of punt until the next turn and say, okay, I'm just going to card this out here and then start buffing on the next turn. And that is our final rule, is that if you don't meet the conditions above, you basically need to delay your buffing until turn 2. That way you actually have the capability to still have the 3-turn coverage of the buffs that you need down the line for being able to NP on the second wave and the third wave. You don't want to run out of the buffs there, or it's going to increase the requirements, and so you guys are going to have to be very careful with that. Some of you guys might have an exorbitantly high grailed Artoria or Mordred or something like that, or even a Beni Inma, in order to be able to more easily and effectively handle this, and it might also help you with the later waves. But again, that's not going to be the standard, and that's not what we're going to judge this by. So just make sure you guys have all these conditions met. And you guys can see any position right here with busters should work as long as you can stagger them. You guys can also use a Beni card at the end in order to be able to kill, and you guys should be able to crit this down as long as the Buster card is being used right here, or this would be a Beni card right here, and then a Beni card in the second slot can also work with the arts card in the third slot working. So again, it's a little bit confusing. You guys will understand this a little bit more as we get to it. But again, that is going to be how you guys are going to get through this wave efficiently and quickly with basically no support casters. Okay, so for walking you guys through the comp now, I want you guys to remember that we are using 3 Sabers and we are using Anniversary Blondes. So there's not a whole lot of structure you have to have. You're just going to have all 3 of them in the front line. Do you remember though, we are assuming that you are popping all these buffs that I'm about to tell you on the turn that you can clear the first wave. That could be turn 1, it could be turn 2. Shit, if you really mess it up, it could be turn 3. But you don't want to pop your buffs until you have the conditions met to kill that first wave. So be very careful with that. Don't pop this necessarily on turn 1 if you don't have the cards. For our turn order here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and start out by popping all of Beni Inma's skills right away. That is going to be skill 1, 2, and 3 for her. Then go ahead and use both Artoria and Mordred's charge skills. At that point, that should get them up to 80% charge or full, since you already popped Beni Inma's charges. And then from there, go ahead and use your intuition skill on Mordred and your charisma skill on Artoria. And lastly, one last thing here, use the star bomb skill from your Anniversary Blonde. That should get you guys the requisite stars that you need to crit through the wave. Hopefully you guys do it in one turn. If so, Yorokobe Shonen, you've done it. Now, as we end up here in turn 2, you have your 2 Sabers ready to NP. The only things you haven't popped on them is the Mana Burst. So go ahead and use the lower NP level Saber that you have, pop their Mana Burst, and go ahead and NP. If you are in that double Mordred situation, again, the demon might live on you at NP2. Don't worry, just card that one out. It should be easy. Now in wave 3 here, you guys are going to want to pop the last remaining mana burst on your last Saber there. Go ahead and use the Anniversary Blond's Buster buff from that and use it on them. And go ahead and fire off that last NP, and there you go. It should actually be a relatively quick and easy comp, assuming you guys don't get screwed on your cards, which shouldn't happen too often. 6 CE, really good for you guys. Now, with regards to the Beni comp, you guys might not have Beni, or you might have to take the Artoria or the Mordred in order to make it work, but you guys can actually get the job done with either Waver or Merlin as the support in place of Beni. Just understand what's at cost if you do that. You're losing an effective unit, so if you do end up with Waver cards or Merlin cards, you're gonna have some issues. So we kind of went through some carding rules right here to just show you guys sort of what would work here. Again, we're still going to assume that everything is critting, otherwise it's not going to work. We are going to also say that you probably need to give the crit buff to whoever has the Buster card lead there in order to be able to have enough damage in order to take out that high health enemy. And then if we are utilizing Merlin instead, we are going to use Merlin's Buster up for whoever has the highest NP level, as that will definitely be required for them to be able to clear. And we're still going to say you guys need to prioritize the high health enemy last, unless you do have a really nice Buster crit or something like that with Merlin's Buster, or again, Waver's crit buff on them. So that should be the requirement. And again, the cards must be able to be staggered as always. And what we mean by that is you have to have the ability to switch between the targets by killing them, so you can't just utilize 2 of the same unit's cards in a row. And if you do not meet the conditions on turn 1, we are going to again ask that you guys delay until turn 2. The good part about this is you don't have to use Mordred or Artoria for this. You could just pick one of those 2 and have the other Saber end up being any AoE Saber that has the capability of clearing the waves later, because at the end of the day you have the charge. For instance, if you were to take Waver as your person for your support in order to charge that unit to full, regardless of whether or not they had charged themselves. So this is at least a malleable variant. You guys can potentially take this and do this for any of these comps as your first wave solution. So this is always here, and that's why we wanted to spell it out for you. Just be careful and play smart if you guys are going to do this. Okay, so next up here we have a 5 CE sort of 0 charge comp here. This will work for Altera, but it will also work for Void Shiki, both of them at NP1. This will not work for a lot of the other Sabers. We tried it with Fergus, it didn't work. We tried it with Umu, it didn't work. So be careful about this. Don't necessarily just think this is going to be a plug and go solution for a lot of these people. The 2 that we're going to recommend it for is Altera and Void Shiki, but it should work. And again, it's going to operate on that Chen Gong system for handling wave 1, and we're going to be using Waver and Scotty at minimum, and then another Waver or Scotty depending on who you bring. So you guys could potentially have both of them yourself and then take whichever one fits your choice, but ultimately it's not going to necessarily help your requirement on the supports here. The good part about this is it uses an MLB imaginary element. We do not assume that it is leveled up. It is very easy. So while it is a 5 CE comp, it at least has a low barrier to entry in the regards that it's not going to require a K-scope. It's not going to require a super scope. It's just going to require that MLB IE, which might be hard for some people to have, but it should be easier than some of the other requirements. And this would, by the way, work with a K-scope as well. It would just improve the comp, not hurt it. We are going to be using an MLB drop CE on Chen Gong. We are going to require his 3rd skill to be at 9, as well as Altera's damage dealing skills there, but ultimately this should be a relatively straightforward comp. The only thing you got to watch out for is Brynhildr here in the final wave, having 13k health remaining. But again, you've got a Saber there. It should be pretty doable. And worst case scenario, you still have a pretty buffed Chen Gong who does have damage bonus. So it should be pretty easy, especially with the Plugsuit buff happening in that turn. Okay, so for the party composition, I want you guys to start out with Chen Gong, and then Waver, and then Altera, and then on your back line you guys can do another Waver and your Scotty. Now I would recommend it Waver then Scotty, and the second being another waiver purely because of the fact that it should actually help damage out if you switch the comp around a little bit, but we'll talk about it again in this regard because we did assume that not to be the case. For our turn order here, you guys are going to start out on turn 1 by using all of the waiver skills on Chen Gong. Go ahead from right there and NP with Chen Gong, and he should easily handle it due to his damage bonus. Nothing too difficult, and he's going to kill that waiver and bring in the other waiver. And turn 2 here, go ahead and use Gong's second skill that should charge Altera to full, and go ahead and use Altera's skill 1 and 3, and then she should be good to NP here, easily handling the demon in this wave. But again, you could have actually used Waiver's third skill instead of Chen Gong's second skill here for the charge and more damage output if you needed it somehow. Now in turn 3, you guys can go ahead and utilize Chen Gong's third skill on your Altera. That should get her the damage buff that she needs. And then go ahead and use all of the remaining waiver skills on Altera. That should bring her up to, again, 50% charge, or the missing Chen Gong skill if you didn't. And then go ahead and Plugsuit out that waiver for your Scotty. Bring her in, use her charge on Altera to bring her up to full. Use Scotty's defense down here, maybe even the quick up if you needed it for carding purposes and were worried. But ultimately, go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff and fire that last Altera NP, and you should handle this pretty easily, with Bryn living about half the time with at most 13k. Okay, so next up we have a 6 CE Plugsuit comp for Arthur here, and that's going to make this really nice. Arthur, remember, has 20% charge, so he's going to be able to get away with a little bit more in terms of the drops. The problem, well, we're going to require an NP3 Arthur, and that's not going to be good for a lot of people. You guys can see even at NP3, Bryn, again, her being counter trait, is living with 21, almost 22k HP and only going to die clean 24% of the time. So you got a little bit of an issue there, but even the demon in there in wave 2 is going to be a little bit of an issue as well. The support requirements are still going to require double waiver and Scotty, or double Scotty and waiver, but we do probably recommend the second waiver just for the ability to break up charge a little bit cleaner and help things out there in wave 2, but also potentially just to really kind of help you guys on your way to being able to kill this efficiently. At that point, you're not going to have to worry about the Scotty defense downs, and it should be relatively good. But again, I think the high barrier to entry here is going to be the Arthur and P levels. And of course, we're going to require Arthur's skills at 10 on his first and third. We didn't tell you to level the middle skill, but certainly that is his intuition, and that can help you out, especially for critting on the third wave there if you manage to get lucky. So I would recommend having the middle skill leveled, just we're not going to set a requirement for that. Chen Gong as well, we're going to require at level 9 on his third skill, but you guys should be used to that by now. Okay, so for your party composition here, I want you guys to set it up as if you have Chen Gong, waiver, and then Arthur. And then in your back line, go ahead and do waiver and Scotty. Remember, the composition matters in a Chen Gong comp because you don't want to be killing the wrong person, and Chen Gong will always kill the leftmost person that's not him. So you want Arthur in that right slot whenever possible. For our turn order now, go ahead and start out on wave 1 here by utilizing waiver's first skill on Chen Gong, and then his second and third skills as well, and that should bring Chen Gong to full. Go ahead and NP at that point, and Chen Gong should easily handle the first wave with his damage bonus and should knock out that waiver, bringing the other one in. Now, in turn 2, go ahead and utilize Chen Gong's skill 2 and skill 3 on Arthur, and then go ahead and do the new waiver's second and third skills in order to bring Arthur up to full. From there, go ahead and NP with Arthur, and he should handle this wave relatively easily. Just watch out for that demon there. It might live every once in a while. And in turn 3 now, I want you guys to go ahead and utilize waiver's first skill to charge Arthur, and then use Arthur's skill 1 and skill 3. That should be his mana burst and his charge. Go ahead and use his skill 2 here as well for the stars if you need it. And then go ahead and Plugsuit that waiver out for Scotty. Bring her in, have her pop her defense down on the enemy, have her use her charge skill on Arthur, and then go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff. And from there, fire off your last NP with Arthur and watch out for Brynhildr, so make sure you pick good cards. Okay, next up we have a 6 CE Plugsuit comp for Artoria and Mordred with double chargers here as our supports. You can utilize Waver and Scotty or double Waver. If you do Waver and Scotty, you can actually take the missing Saber that you would need, but it does have to be Mordred or Artoria in order to have the requisite charge here to work. And you cannot do double Scotty. It would not work in terms of the charge breakdown. You can mix and match though, and so you could basically do double Artoria or double Mordred. If you're doing Mordred and Artoria, you guys can see here, it would be either NP1 or NP3 required for both of them. Again, you could, do Artoria on wave 3 and Mordred on wave 1 and 2 if you so chose. Just understand that is going to change things around a little bit, but at the same time it would still be the same NP level requirement there. And you can do double Mordred, but at that point we're going to need an NP2 and an NP5 Mordred, which makes it a lot more difficult. And you can do double Artoria, but it's still, even with double Artoria, going to be basically NP3 because, well, you will get a lot closer here in order to kill Brynhildr with double Artoria. It would still ultimately not be enough to step it down to an NP2. So again, the comp is as it stands, but it is interesting. I'm just going to say this comp is probably not easier than the Chen Gong variant with just an NP1 Artoria, but again, it just depends on what your goals are and what you want to do. So if you just want to do 3 Saber NPs, this comp can work. Just be careful of, again, the demon's health and Brynhildr's health at the requisite levels. It require a lot of carding and potentially a lot of luck depending on what you need. For your party composition, I want you guys to start out with a front line of both your Sabers and then the Waver, and then on your back line have the other Waver or your Scotty. Now to begin with the turn order here, I want you guys to go ahead and start out by turn 1 utilizing all of the Waver's buffs on your lower NP level. Go ahead and pop Artoria's Charisma if you have her in the party, also a second one if you have her. Then go ahead and fire off the lower MP levels NP. It should easily handle wave 1 and you should be fine. Now in turn 2 here, go ahead and Plugsuit out that other Waver for the other Waver and or Scotty, and go ahead and charge the lower NP level up with all of their skills. Unless it's a Scotty, maybe hold the defense down for wave 3. For there though, go ahead and pop the charge skill on the lower NP level and the mana burst on the lower NP level, and again fire that NP off. Watch out, the demon will probably live and probably have about 15k remaining, so make sure you choose your cards wisely for this. And turn 3, go ahead and pop the high NP level Saber that remains as charge skill, and go ahead and pop their mana burst. And if you have Scotty, use the defense down at this time, and then go ahead and pop the Plugsuit attack buff and fire the NP off one last time. Just be careful again here with Brynhildr. She'll live most of the time and have a most 22k remaining, so make sure you pick the appropriate cards to card her out. Utilize your intuition skills if you need to here. Do whatever it takes to get through this. Okay, so next up we have a 6 CE Plugsuit comp that's a variation of the prior one. So it's still going to be using double Sabers, but this time we've used Salter instead of Mordred. And because it's Salter, we can actually get away with NP2 rather than NP3. And that's what actually makes this a little bit more affordable. So pretty nice in that regard, in that we don't have to have as high of an MP level, but unfortunately it's still a story locked unit that you might have had a hard time getting. The other unfortunate change here is you can no longer mix and match your supports. You must use double Waver for this to work appropriately. So that is going to be a little bit of a consideration here, but it might be, again, just a little bit easier on requirements. The other good news about using Salter is man traded. So this is actually really good for countering Brynhildr, and you guys can see NP2 Salter cleared this a lot more effectively than the NP3 did on the last calculation, which left her at about 22k. This one's only going to have 7k, which is easily cardable out. So the big thing you're going to worry about and maybe popping your intuitions for, if you have them still, would be here against the demon on wave 2, but be very careful with that. That's going to be where you're going to want to be concerned about the cards. But overall, I think this comp would actually be a better solution than the prior version, assuming you have the appropriate units. So for your party composition, you guys are going to want to start out with a front line of both your Sabers, and then Waver on the front line there, and Waver on the back line as well. The turn order, go ahead and start out on turn 1 by popping all of the Waver skills on Artoria to bring her to full. Go ahead and pop Artoria and Salter's Charisma here, and that should get you the requisite attack ups that you need. And go ahead and fire off Artoria's NP. She'll easily at NP1 handle the first wave. In wave 2 here, go ahead and use Artoria's charge skill. That's also her intuition, and that should bring her up to 50% charge. Go ahead and Plugsuit out that other waiver for the other one, and then go ahead and utilize all of the waiver's charge skills on Artoria at that point. That should bring her up to full, pop her mana burst, and go to town. Now in wave 3, you guys should be good to go ahead and just pop Salter's charge skill if you didn't already for wave 2. And then go ahead and pop Salter's mana burst and the Plugsuit attack buff and fire her NP off one last time here. And again, Brynhildr should be fine. Like I said, the big thing you guys got to watch out for is the demon there in wave 2. So you can already go ahead and use the charge skill from Salter in wave 2 should you so choose. Okay, so next up we have a 6 CE Plugsuit comp utilizing Eresh and Artoria. Probably the only good thing about this comp is going to be that it is going to sort of lessen the requirement for your supports. You guys can use Waver or double Scotty, but at the end of the day, we do recommend double Waver. It's really going like... We calculated everything in this comp with double Waver. If you tried to use the second Scotty, you would increase the NP level requirement, and that's already a hairy thing for Artoria in this. As you guys can see, even at NP3, she's going to leave the demon with 13k on the second wave and Brynhildr with 15k on wave 2 at worst, so you're going to have to pay attention to your carding. But another interesting part about this comp is you can substitute Eresh for Lartoria or Nero caster. NP1 of all of them will work as long as you have their damage skills maxed out and have the ability to utilize one of their buffs on Artoria. So for like Nero caster's case, you would use her targetable guts on Artoria rather than herself, so you guys get the 3 turns of buff for her. But it's still not going to change that. You could use a Mordred here instead. However, if you use Mordred, it's going to require NP5 instead of NP3, so that's not good. And I'm pretty sure if you at that point switched it to Waver and Scotty, it would also be impossible at that point. So be careful with that. Again, this isn't going to be the best comp, but it was another comp that we saw as a potential solution. So for your party composition, you want to structure it in the way that you're going to be having Eresh in the front wave, then Artoria, then Waver, and then another Waver on your back line. So for the turn order here, start out on turn 1 by utilizing Artoria's Charisma skill. From there, go ahead and use Waver's third skill, his attack up on Eresh, and then go ahead and utilize Eresh's second and third skills and have her NP, and she should easily be able to handle the wave with maybe the snowman living for about, 1 card's worth of health. From here on wave 2, go ahead and swap that Eresh out for your second Waver. Go ahead and use Waver's first and third skills here on Artoria, and that should bring her up to full and have her fire off her NP. Again, watch out, she might leave the demon alive most of the time there, and especially with the most being 13k, you might need to pick your cards carefully. Now in turn 3 here, go ahead and utilize Artoria's second and third skills. That's the mana burst and the charge skill. That should get her back to 50%, and then go ahead and utilize all the remaining Waver skills on her. So the first Waver's first and second skill and the second Waver's second skill, and that should bring her up to full. And then go ahead and utilize the Plugsuit attack buff and fire your NP off. Hopefully you have what you need to be able to card Bryn out. She'll live about half the time with at most 15k, but again, with all the buffs flying around, you should be okay in that regard. Okay, next up we have another elegant 6 CE solution. This is going to be a Plugsuit requirement, but we're only going to need an NP1 Artoria. And that's what's going to make this a really nice solution for people that want to automate things and not deal with the crit comp. So this is going to be really good for you guys in that regard. You can use Mordred here in this comp as well, but it is going to increase the NP level requirement. So at that point, you're looking at something like an NP2 or possibly even 3. So just be careful with that. But again, if you have your Artoria, this would be really nice. We do have quite the support requirements here. You can utilize Waver, Merlin, and either another Waver or Scotty. I'm still going to recommend Waver here in most of those cases, but it could work. The cool part about this is Chen Gong with his damage bonus is easily going to handle waves 1 here, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Just make sure you have his third skill leveled up to 9 for the damage buff on that. And then Artoria herself here, make sure you have all of her skills maxed out. You could probably drop the damage skills there, you know, 1 tick each to 9 if you're really concerned about the lures. Just understand you might have the demon living with a little bit more health there in wave 2 as a result. But again, this should be a really straightforward, easy comp. The good news is you actually get to utilize Merlin thanks to Artoria being a 50% charger over 2 turns. So really nice, and that should really help out the capabilities of damage in this. Okay, so for your party composition here, I want you guys to start out with Gong in the first slot, then Waver, and then Artoria. And then on your back line, put Merlin and then the second Waver or Scotty, should you so choose. For our turn order here on turn 1, I want you guys to go ahead and utilize Artoria's first skill, her Charisma. Go ahead and use all the Waver skills on Gong. That'll charge him up to full and have him fire off his NP. Gong with his damage bonus is easily going to handle that wave, and then he's going to kill Waver and bring in Merlin. In turn 2 here, go ahead and utilize Gong's second skill. That's going to actually bring Artoria up to 80%. Go ahead and use Merlin's first and third skills to charge Artoria to full and get her the buster buff that she needs and fire off the NP yet again. She's going to easily handle this wave, and the demon will live with at most 6k. In turn 3 here, go ahead and Plugsuit out that Merlin for your Waver or the Scotty that was coming in. Utilize all their skills on Artoria to bring her up, and then go ahead and utilize Artoria's charge skill and mana burst skill to get her the damage she needs. And then use Gong's third skill on Artoria on this turn, as well as the Plugsuit attack buff. And you should be good at that point to fire that NP one last time, and she'll easily slaughter Brynhildr even at NP 1. All right, now here is going to be our much easier Gong variants here. Again, this is going to be the 6 CE Plugsuit comps here, but we're going to be utilizing Mordred's version here. It's still going to require an NP1 Mordred. But the reason is we're actually able to get away with staggered supports here. You guys can utilize double Waver and Merlin, or Waver, Merlin, and a Scotty should you so choose. Again, the skill levels are going to be required to be 10, 10, 10, but we really probably don't need it on the intuition. Just again, be careful there because we do have a lot of health remaining here against Brynhildr and the demon. So the intuition being capped out is not a bad thing and would actually help you out. So if you really want to save a lore, you guys can shave it, but I do recommend having it leveled. And again, we are going to be requiring Gong's third skill to be at 9, and as always, the supports are going to have the required damage skills at rank 10. So again, I think this is going to be a relatively straightforward comp. Gong having damage bonus is going to make him easily able to handle wave 1. And just watch out for carding on waves 2 and 3, particularly wave 3 here with Brynhildr. All right, for our party composition now, I want you guys to start out with a front line of Gong, Waver, and Mordred, and then have Merlin and the other Waver or Scotty on your back line. And then for the turn order here in turn 1, utilize all of that first Waver's charge skills on Gong to charge him to full. From that point, you guys can just go ahead and NP, and Gong will easily handle wave 1 with not any really concern thanks to his damage bonus. In turn 2 here, you guys are going to want to go ahead and use Gong's second skill and go ahead and utilize the Merlin's first and third skill on Mordred, as he will have come in after Waver died from Gong's NP. And then go ahead and fire off the NP there from Mordred at that point, as she'll be full. And she should easily handle that wave with the demon living with about 11k at worst. So just again, pay attention to your cards and choose what you need. In turn 3, go ahead and Plugsuit out that Merlin for the other Waver or Scotty. Use all of their skills on Mordred to bring her up to full. Go ahead and utilize Mordred's charge skill at this point, and mana burst skill and intuition if you so choose. And she should at that point be full. So go ahead and use the Plugsuit attack buff, and then finally Gong's third skill on your Mordred, and that should get her all the damage that she needs to go ahead and handle the wave. Just be careful about Brynhildr. Again, she can live with up to 18k health, so make sure you choose appropriate cards if you have the opportunity. Okay, now for the other Gong comp here, we have a 6 CE Plugsuit that's going to be utilizing Salter. Again, she got her early upgrade, so that has allowed her to become a 20% charger on the front end, and overall with multiple MPs, a 30% charger. So that actually does allow her to work. However, because of that, that is going to change the ability to take Merlin in the party. And so now she is going to have Scotty and a second Waver versus being able to take Merlin because she doesn't have as much charge as Mordred or OG Saber do. So the other problem with that is because of that, we now require an NP2 Salter, even though she does have that man trait, but you guys can see it's at least very clean at NP2. So you could try to risk it at NP1, but we really don't recommend it. So again, just be careful if you're gonna try that, and make sure that you pick your cards appropriately. But otherwise, again, a relatively easy comp. Just make sure that you have Salter's first and third skills maxed out. Again, the middle skill has the intuition and the charge on it. It is a flat 20% charge, so you don't need to level it, but you will get more stars from leveling it, and that might help you for carding if you were trying to chance this at a lower NP level. And as always, Chen Gong's third skill needs to be at 9 at least to get you guys the requisite damage buff that you're gonna need. For your party composition, I want you guys to start out with Chen Gong, and then Waver, and then Salter. And then on your back line, go ahead and utilize another Waver and Scotty. For the turn order though, let's go ahead and start out by utilizing Waver's skill 1 on Chen Gong, and then the second and third skill as well on Chen Gong, and that should get him up to full. From there, go ahead and use Salter's third skill, her Charisma, and then fire off the NP with Chen Gong, and he should easily be able to handle the wave. At that point in turn 2 now, Waver will have died and brought in the other Waver. From here, go ahead and utilize Chen Gong's second and third skills on Salter, and that'll get her some damage. And then go ahead and utilize the Waver's second and third skills to bring Salter up to full charge. At that point, you guys should be good to fire off Salter's first NP, and she should easily handle the demon in that wave at NP2. And now in wave 3 here, go ahead and utilize the remaining skills from Waver there, and then go ahead and Plugsuit that Waver for Scotty, and then have her go ahead and charge Salter there, and go ahead and have her use the defense down as well. Salter from there can go ahead and use her first and second skills to get her the charge and the mana burst that she needs. Go ahead and utilize the Plugsuit skill 1 and fire off the NP at this point, and you guys should be good, and she should cleanly handle Brynhildr all the time unless you were trying to chance it with a lower NP level. All right, now here we actually have a strange comp. This is going to be a 5 CE Plugsuit comp utilizing Lakshmibai, and we can actually loop her through the nodes. It's just, again, there's so many 6 CE variants for this node that you guys really shouldn't have to do this, but this option is available to you guys if you have the capability. The problem is it's going to be using Super Scope, which is a level 100 MLB K scope, and it's going to be using double Scotty and Waver, which is going to be a pretty high barrier to entry. Otherwise, NP2 is going to be there as we might need it, and we are going to require the first skill to be rank 10 for the attack buff. But otherwise, again, as you guys can see, it is a clean comp here at NP2 and will easily handle the wave. At NP1, it might not work on refund, as remember, you are going to need these exact amounts here in terms of the amount that you need. Otherwise, you can shave maybe 2%, but at the end of the day, NP1 might scuff you in that regard, so be very careful. All right, so for your party composition, you guys are going to want to start out with Lakshmibai in the first slot and then double Scotty. On the back line there, go ahead and put Waver in the first slot of that, and you guys should be good. For your turn order here on turn 1, start out turn 1 with Lakshmi's first skill. Then from there, utilize both the Scotty's first skills on Lakshmi and fire her NP off. You should easily handle the snowman in wave 1 and not really give you much of an issue. And wave 2 here, go ahead and pick one of the Scotties and use their second and third skills here on Lakshmi. That should get the defense down as well on the enemies, and then go ahead and swap that Lakshmi out for the Waver in the back line. From there, go ahead and utilize that Waver's second and third skills, and that should charge Lakshmi to full and have her NP. Again, she should easily handle everything in this wave at NP2, so don't worry too much about it. In turn 3 here, go ahead and utilize the last remaining Scotty's second and third skills, and that should charge Lakshmi up to about, again, 80% here, and then go ahead and utilize the last Waver skill, his first skill there on Lakshmi, to charge her to full, and go ahead and fire the NP one last time with the Plugsuit buff attached. Okay guys, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Again, hopefully we covered something here that you guys can do, and if not, remember there is always the universal video with some solutions there, so you guys can check that one out if you guys have a Dantes, a Space Ishtar, a Musashi Berserker, or again, any of those people that just work across just about all the nodes. So hopefully there's something in this video that at least solves your problems. And if not, remember there's always the crit carding solution for wave 1, so you guys should be able to move through it relatively quickly. Again, I'm going to thank you guys for watching. Feel free to check me out weeknights on Twitch at 7 p.m. Eastern, and join the Discord if you guys have questions or ask them below. We're always happy to answer, so feel free to, again, leave the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you guys want more. And I will see you guys for the next one, so good day and happy hunting.